The system congratulates Suho on mastering decapitation, confirming that the chief hobgoblin has been killed. It announces that he has conquered the gate, awarding him the title of MVP. As the MVP, Suho gains additional experience points, a bonus stat, and levels up. All his stats increase by 1, and he receives yet another bonus stat. Upon reaching level 10, the system encourages him to grow even stronger, awarding him 5 additional stat points. His Healing Light skill ranks up, and as he reaches this milestone, the level of all healer-exclusive skills increases by 1 stage. He acquires a new skill, Cure, which he realizes will allow him to counter debuffs effectively. Reflecting on his progress, Suho thinks that as he continues to develop his skills, he'll someday be able to cure even the deadliest poisons. With everything accomplished in the gate, he turns toward the exit, remarking to himself that it's time to see some familiar faces again after a long while. Outside the gate, a crowd has gathered, watching the gate's tremors. One person speculates that the gate may have been conquered, noticing someone emerging. As Suho steps out, the bystanders murmur in disbelief, wondering if he truly cleared the gate alone. Scouts from various guilds immediately approach him, inviting him to join their ranks, but he ignores them, effortlessly leaping down from the floating rocks to the ground below. Landing smoothly, Suho approaches young Chulman, the team leader of the South Korean Hunter Association, and greets him, leaving Chulman puzzled. Another man asks Chulman if he knows Suho, to which Chulman replies that he doesn't. Moments later, Suho and Chulman are seated in an office at the South Korean Hunter Association. Chulman looks at his tablet, recalling how Suho had confidently extended his hand to greet him and introduced himself. They shook hands, and Chulman had introduced himself as a representative from the Gate Management Division of the association. Curious, Chulman asks how Suho knows him and if he has any specific business with him. Suho replies that he planned to discuss the details later at the association, as he's there to obtain a hunter's license. Chulman asks if he's there for a license renewal. Chulman considers the situation, realizing that since Suho isn't renewing a license, he must be an unregistered hunter, a newly awakened player. It's unusual, he thinks, for someone from the healer class, typically the weakest among the 4 class categories, to conquer a gate solo. As Suho eats, he notices Chulman's pensive expression and asks if there's an issue with his results. Reviewing the data, Chulman can't help but notice that Suho's performance aligns more with a warrior's than a healer. He confirms Suho's name, and Suho responds affirmatively. Curious about his background, Chulman asks what Suho was doing before this. Suho explains that he's a college dropout. When Chulman probes further, wondering if Suho was unemployed, Suho admits he struggled academically. Chulman guesses he may have been in medical studies, but Suho clarifies that he studied physical education, surprising Chulman. Most people with Suho's background, he reflects, would have chosen to be a warrior or archer. Chulman then asks why he chose the healer class, to which Suho responds after a moment's thought, explaining that he dislikes getting hurt. Chulman, still intrigued by Suho's ability to clear the gate alone, asks for details about how he did it. Suho explains that there wasn't much of a strategy. He entered the gate, encountered a hobgoblin, and killed it to survive. Chulman, surprised to hear that a hobgoblin was involved, watches as Suho extends his arm and releases a collection of magic stones from his inventory, leaving Chulman visibly astonished. Suho clarifies that these stones were collected from hobgoblins and the gate's boss, admitting he's unsure of their exact value and is willing to let Chulman handle it. Chulman agrees to process them quickly, though he can't help but feel curious about Suho's intentions, grabbing one of the magic crystal and looks at it. He asks Suho if he truly wants to become a hunter, and Suho affirms, explaining that he made up his mind as soon as he awakened as a player. Impressed yet cautious, Chulman commends his decision but warns that it might seem impulsive, wondering if there's a deeper reason. Suho reflects, then admits he's uncertain about his exact motivations. Chulman, trying to hide a smirk, turns away, but Suho notices and thinks that he's not very good at concealing his expressions. Suho goes on to explain that he understands people become hunters for various reasons, but his own motivation is personal. He reveals that he lost his entire family in a gate-related incident, which filled him with a deep resentment toward monsters and gates. Although he knew it was dangerous, entering the gate alone was an emotional decision. He hoped that killing monsters might ease his frustration, but he still felt unresolved. Reflecting on his past, he He realized that his purpose is to prevent others from experiencing similar loss and to protect people from the devastation caused by monsters. Chulman, moved by Suho's determination, listens intently as Suho expresses his commitment to joining the South Korean Hunter Association, driven by a desire to ensure everyone's safety. Chulman is momentarily speechless, then expresses how pleased he is to hear Suho's motivations. He confirms if Suho is sure about joining the South Korean Hunter Association, reminding him that being a civil servant hunter means earning a considerably lower salary than hunters in private guilds. Suho assures him that he understands his priority isn't the pay, but rather the perks that come with SKA, such as unrestricted access to various gates, priority in gate conquests, and strict enforcement against player crimes. Intrigued, Chulman asks what he means by this. Suho explains that he wants to be actively involved in the field, particularly in gate conquests. Chulman is shocked, thinking about how rare it is for someone to want this kind of work. While SKA has priority access to gates, it often auctions them off to private guilds to avoid unnecessary risk to its own hunters, who receive lower salaries. Most civil servant hunters are driven by the stability of the role, often aiming for administrative positions to avoid entering gates altogether. Unlike the others, Suho genuinely wants to be in the field, driven by a commitment to public safety, a rare type of patriotism in their field. Leaning back in his, Chulman feels a mix of pride and disbelief. Meeting someone like Suho is a refreshing experience. When Suho notices Chulman's reaction and asks if he's all right, Chulman smiles, explaining that it's been a long time since he's met someone with such dedication. He promises to complete Suho's registration and prepare the necessary documentation. However, he informs Suho that to take the hunter exam, he'll need to pass an aptitude test, a written exam, and a practical exam. Chulman then points out that registration for this year's exam has already closed, and that the exam itself is scheduled for tomorrow, which leaves Suho surprised. Seeing his reaction, Chulman offers to add him as a last-minute registrant, explaining that it's allowed under the rules since Suho conquered a gate alone. He can submit a recommendation to the higher-ups, which should secure approval. He warns Suho, however, that preparing for both the written and practical exams in just one day will be challenging. Given Suho's field performance, Chulman has no concerns about the physical aspect, but he worries about the written exam. Suho, undeterred, insists that he's ready to take on the challenge and asks to be registered. He reasons that it's an excellent opportunity to gain experience in the exam process, even if he doesn't pass. Confidently, he decides to tackle the exams all at once the next day. Chulman informs Suho that he can view his aptitude test results that same day. Suho thanks him, but with a hint of embarrassment, admits that he currently doesn't have the money for the registration fees and asks if the magic stones can be processed right away. Chulman agrees to handle it while verifying the test results, and Suho feels a surge of gratitude, thinking that even now, Chulman is the one person he can truly rely on. Suho thanks him warmly. A few minutes later, Chulman returns, informing Suho that all the aptitude tests have been completed and that the proceeds from the magic stones have been deposited into his account. Checking his phone as he eats, Suho is pleasantly surprised by the amount, while Chulman explains that civil servant hunters receive a tax exemption benefit specifically for magic stones. Amazed, Suho asks if this means they're effectively duty-free. He then hesitantly requests another favor, explaining that he's heard the association has a library with workbooks and reference materials relevant to tomorrow's exam. With the test so close, he feels the need to cram and asks if he could study there to prepare. Chulman, delighted, assures him that he's more than welcome to use the library. Chulman then personally shows Suho to the library, mentioning that he doesn't need an employee card to leave, so he's free to study there as long as he needs. Chulman wishes him luck on tomorrow's exam, and Suho bows in thanks, telling him to be careful on his way home. As Chulman heads out, Suho watches him, reflecting that Chulman is as kind and dependable as ever, even though he's unaware of the pivotal role he'll play as the future president of the association. Suho smiles to himself, finding it amusing to pretend he knows nothing, knowing he'd raise suspicion if he acted as though he already knew everything. He turns and sets off, resolved to locate what he came for. As he roams the library, he recalls the major events that will shape the future. However, he realizes he can't remember every detail. After all, he's only human, and wishes he had a skill to aid his memory. His attention is then caught by a large, intriguing book, which he pulls from the shelf. The system informs him that it's a book from another world. That's all for today, guys. See you on the next upload.